Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian own, nothing control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listen, replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in the replay. Always appreciate it. Once again, this is the vault, episode 339, Sovereign Wealth Funds. Always appreciate everybody once again for tuning in live, listening to replay. This is the 8 p.m. episode on Tuesdays that we have standard Eastern Standard Time over at the vault. So appreciate everybody that tunes in live to the episode, types into the chat where they're listening live from. Always appreciate it. Feel free to even type into the chat where you're listening from in the replay. So appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Today's episode 339, Sovereign Wealth Funds. It's a very important episode because we get so many people that come to the vault with their family. They come to the vault with their friends. They come to the vault with their community. And so we're going to go over what these entities are, just because we know that so many families want to move in a wealth position. When you're talking about wealth positions, we're talking about funds that are going to be put together with different families. So we're talking about possibly a sovereign wealth fund. It may be a sovereign wealth fund with multiple families. It may be a sovereign wealth fund which we can see is coming from the state. So we're going to go ahead and go through it today, which we're talking about a sovereign wealth fund. We're off the definition off of Investopedia, which may not be the best definitions, but we're going to comment on what was stated here, which is most people's definition of what are considered the sovereign wealth fund to be. A sovereign wealth fund is a state-owned investment fund comprised of money generated by the government, often derived from the country's surplus revenues. SWF, which are sovereign wealth funds, provide a benefit for the country's economy and its citizens. Funding for a sovereign wealth fund can come from a variety of sources. Popular sources are surplus revenues from state owned resource revenues, trade surpluses, bank revenues, and may accumulate from budgeting excesses, foreign currency operations, money from privatizations, and government transfer payments. So, as we can see, there's multiple ways to start these funds. Where do they get these funds from? So when we go into the definition and we talk about money from privatizations, when people talk about trying to monetize these so-called instruments and things of that nature, there you go. In general, sovereign wealth funds have a targeted purpose. In some countries, sovereign wealth funds can be similar to venture capital for the private sector. Now, did you hear that? That means that if it is getting government funds, they're taking them and giving them to the private sector through private investment, through venture capital. That's the new term for it. Venture capital. When you're looking for money, you're looking for venture capital for the private sector. When people say, "Oh, I'm going private. I'm trying to get credit on a trust." You're looking for venture capital. Most people, they're not familiar with these type of entities. At the end of the day, we can continue reading on when you talk about sovereign wealth funds. Some of them you're going to see are like pension funds. Uh, these are funds that usually have long positions in bigger companies in the world. They're almost institutional funding. Of course, they're institutional funding, and so these people are obviously in a position where somebody says, "Oh, well, how much money do you need to start this sovereign wealth fund?" When you have multiple families, we in some respects you could say it's a village or it could be a city of families that have a fund together as a community chest, and they are investing in other countries. And so you have the wealth manager, someone that may be the manager there, whether it's at a bank, or you have an independent sovereign wealth fund house where essentially someone's managing the fund within the community, and in turn they're managing the fund and doing the investments, whether they're domestic or abroad. But the reason why we do sovereign wealth funds, because once again, there's so many families that come to the vault and say, oh, well, we need to get over and do some stuff with our family. And then they say, okay, this is what we're building to sovereign wealth fund status. You're not building to, oh, let's get over here for, these different type of minimizations for liabilities. This is actually about building wealth. This is actually about investment long term in different environments. When we talk about sovereign wealth funds, well, what does it take, Trust Christian? And what does it? How much money does it take? Does it take 30 million? So if you have 30 people that have $1 million each, that can put into a fund, that's what can we consider that a sovereign wealth fund status? Well, when you get to a $30 million level, there are different investments available to you. Just like if you don't make 30 million or don't have 30 million, those investments aren't available to you. But we know when you get to the 30, that's what happens. You get institutions looking at you. You can handle less than 50 million by yourself with you and the 30 other people. This is how sovereign wealth funds are started. Sure, 30 millionaires, different millionaires that put up a million. They can get funds from $100 million, $1 billion investment. Why? Because they're still little, but ladies and gentlemen, to manage that type of capital, they already know that's more than most communities can put together at one time, because most people are not in those what they call sovereign wealth funds. They're not in a fund together. They're not moving together. The leverage is not there. They're doing things as individuals. It's about the leverage. Greetings for everybody tuning in live, listening to replay. Appreciate Humble County for tuning in live. Listen to replay. Always appreciate Humble County. Someone says, how does privacy affect the funds that are sovereign, but may be prohibited in ways revolving around tax? Well, it just depends on the structure. So obviously, it's always going to depend on the structure. Obviously, because when we talk about sovereign wealth funds, we're talking about are they public or private. So that lends to everything. Whether that answer can be stated in the public, because it's either a public answer, or if it's private. If it's public, it has to do the proper reporting. Same thing with private. When people talk about these things in the public, we're not a tax account. We're not financial advisors. We're a trust training program, which we work with these entities. We work with people that are in these entities, whether you're talking about trust or foundation. So when you talk about privacy, most of these people own nothing, control everything. So their name's not on anything that they own anything. These are the type of communities and conversations that we're having. When it comes to sovereign wealth funds, these traditional trustees, they go through the trustee training. Know they've been trained pretty much from day one that they own nothing, control everything thought process. So when it comes to any liability, trustees even understand how to get rid of liabilities, because that's the whole goal, is to be minimized is the best possible position. So when it comes to whether we're talking about name, once again, whether we're talking about any type of liability, once name's not, taxes chase title. So who owns the money? These are the questions that they will have to ask. And so that obviously those questions are somewhere you're going to ask for a tax position when it comes to even having a sovereign wealth fund. Because when it comes to having a sovereign wealth fund, ladies and gentlemen, these are people that are, I mean, we're giving you a light example of 30 millionaires that are in with $1 million each. Usually, you can see someone with that by themselves, and so they're not considered a sovereign wealth fund at that point if they're at 30 million by themselves. But when people have $1 million, excuse us, $100 million, they're not considered a sovereign wealth fund, but they have something that they can invest. And a lot of these people are heavily invested. We wouldn't say everybody's completely cash liquid with $100 million, but they do have the ability to leverage $100 million, and they're still not considered a sovereign wealth fund. Traditionally, because most people know we're living in the age of the unicorns, so the unicorns are billion-dollar entities. We're in the age of unicorns, so a sovereign wealth fund is generally going to be a billion-dollar entity. But like we say, just because you have 30 million in a local area that can go out and build subdivisions and things of that nature and go get 50 to 100 million dollars lines of credit and leverage to build different communities, these are how these funds are actually growing from what we see, and how we're doing it, because that's how funds are growing right now. They're either gobbling up little guys, or they're going out and starting funds with partners. And traditionally, they're going to invest in the little guys, whether they're going to gobble up and put them inside of the entity, or they're actually going to partner with them. So let's see. Feel free to type into the chat any questions that you may have about sovereign wealth funds and how they can be done at more of a domestic level, or even an international level, because those things matter as well. When someone's talking about around tax or something, or how does privacy go, remember, there's jurisdiction still, ladies and gentlemen. There will forever be jurisdiction. And this is the issue, is that people don't want to talk about these things in the public because these are getting to the crux of the matter. The crux of the matter is jurisdiction. Where are these people created? Oh, here we go. We're going to go there with y'all today. They talk about sovereign wealth funds. Stay away from these things. Oh, they say stay away from the Cayman Islands. Stay away from these places. Ladies and gentlemen, still to this day, in 2021, we see reports from 2020 and further. The Cayman still has the largest yacht registration in the world. They have the largest yacht registration in the world. The island that the yachts aren't even always parked at. But they want to sit here and say, oh, we got the most registered in the world. Not only that, they're still ranking up there for business. Don't think business has scurried away from these places. These businesses have not scurried away from these places. And we're not encouraging this place. We're just stating that when it comes to sovereign wealth funds and people, running their mouths out here, talking in this space and talking about sovereign wealth funds, and they're saying, oh, these are these foreign entities that are very nebulous and very ambiguous, and it's just not true. This is what's going on in the world. We could point out multiple sovereign wealth funds that are pretty much market movers. Traditionally, sovereign wealth funds are private. Sovereign wealth funds are private traditionally, because even though they say that these entities are state owned or state created, these entities still are started through private families at times. That's why we're doing the episode here, is to talk about the private families that are utilizing these things, because you're still seeing private families come together and have $1 billion in there. They're having $1 billion in there. There's multiple funds across around the world in multiple countries where the families are taking power, which you would almost say from the central government, because they are a sovereign wealth fund. They are going in now and doing strategic investment as a $1 billion plus valuation. They're going in as a 13 billion. They're going in as 25 billion. We don't want to say 100 billion, because we've seen the Asian nations sit in a room and say don't come talk to them unless you have $100 million deal. 300 million dollar deal. So, at the end of the day, we're pointing out, ladies and gentlemen, that these funds are what they call community banks. It's a sovereign wealth fund. It's a sovereign wealth bank. They have capital. They're holding it. It's liquid. They are in a position to buy. They're in a position to buy. It's not to sell. They're to buy. Can they sell position? Yes. But sovereign wealth funds are in the business of making investments. So when you talk about these families, you're talking about them buying assets as families together. How much more powerful are these families working together? What is it? What is it about these families? Well, one, they're in trust. We finally get to it. Oh, they're in trust. Think about it. They're operating internationally. What makes you think they're not operating that way? Private. Oh, trust Christian, we're going to do this for the community. We're going to do this. How are you going to do it for the community? You're not operating right. You got to be in the correct entity. Sovereign wealth funds You think it's run through a LLC? Then we get these people. Oh no, I know y'all don't know about this IBC. We had this one guy one time get on the line with one of the mentors. Tell me, oh no, we gonna do this with an IBC. We gonna run with the IBC, right? And where is he at today? Nowhere, because they get this information and they don't use it. So we're talking about working together in a community, utilizing what they call community trust, which is considered to be a what? Sovereign wealth fund. Oh wow. So what are they doing in a sovereign wealth fund is different from a REIT. Because they could be families just getting in buying real estate, right? Right, that's a REIT. But we're talking about sovereign wealth fund. See, that's how you know it's bigger. See, sovereign wealth fund, they're covering investing in companies, not just land. But when you get sold on the REIT, oh, we got sold on the REIT, Trust Christian and all. We know about the REIT. We know about the real estate investment trust, but the sovereign wealth fund, we didn't see that. Where's that at? It's a $1 billion entity. That's what it is. It's a $1 billion entity. Multiple $1 billion entities, multiple $1 billion families. What do you mean? Sovereign wealth funds are actually nations working together at this point, ladies and gentlemen. Sovereign wealth funds have nations that have come together and put together their own private funds. So you got like these, it's so called like these treaties, but they're not treaties. They're actually putting funds in what's called a sovereign wealth fund. Sovereign wealth funds. These things are what they call community chests. Hold on. They said you were in debt if you're the people. So not only are you in debt, the government's taking the money and investing it privately with other governments. Oh man, Judge Christian and Paul, they're doing what we would do as the people. What type of returns you think they're getting? Do you even know the returns they're getting? Are they getting returns or are they doing a folly? Right. Well, guess what? These sovereign wealth funds actually have to report. So since they report, they actually let you know what they're doing with the money, where they're investing the money. We're seeing it, ladies and gentlemen. The transition of what people say, oh, the dollar's going down, the dollar's going down. Listen to the narrative. We've heard this. Ladies and gentlemen, we could almost tell you to read one book. It was written in 1913, and that's what they were saying then. They've been saying this for over 100 years. But where's gold at in America right now? Where's silver looking at? Where are precious metals looking at? Where are the industrial metals looking at? Where's copper sitting at right now? Oh, we don't want to talk about that industrial grade metal because we're Americans. We like the fancy stuff. We like the stocks. Let's do the stocks. Let's talk about stocks. Right. We're going to talk about the stocks, right? Are we going to talk about equities? Are we going to talk about these companies? Are we going to talk about commodities? Are we going to talk about currencies? We say, oh, the dollar, the dollar. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, we're fine. You want to hear that the GBP, you want to hear that the euro are still surviving. Sure, but what other currency? You can't even buy the Chinese currency. This is where we are in the world. And where we think we're so advanced, it's almost Stone Age when you don't even want to allow your currency to be circulated. But that's what they're doing. And then you get the states where the states are going rampant. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been seeing the wealth transfer happen because it's only 100 years in after the social experiment, the New Deal. It's only 100 years in, maybe. So, what are you looking forward to? Are you looking forward to a sovereign wealth fund buying out your community because it's bankrupt? Now the Asian countries own it. They own more land. You didn't think it was capitalism, but why not give up the land? It's just a debt, right? That's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing these countries go in and buy up other countries. That's how it's happening. They're utilize. If it's not the countries, then you're seeing families. Families are going in doing heavy artillery work, going in building industry, building infrastructure. You're going to see a lot of those deals happen. Of course, you're seeing a lot of those deals happen. You all want to say, well, what does a deal look like, Trust Christian? What does a deal look like? A deal looks like Dubai. That's what a deal looks like. Oh, no, it's no way that they're. What do you mean? You think they wouldn't build Dubai in Idaho? You think they wouldn't build it in a nice climate? But and think about it. When you go to Las Vegas, they have beaches in Las Vegas. How do they have beaches in Las Vegas? Because they build them. They excavate. These are sovereign wealth funds that come in and do these things. They built a beach in the desert. It's called Dubai. It's one of many. Sovereign wealth funds are going to do that. If you see Middle Eastern money, they're going to do that. That's what they're doing. When you see the states, they're doing Vegas. They're trying to build these mini oases in the middle of nowhere. And that's what you're going to continue to see. You're going to see what people call foreign investment. Get used to this term. It's called foreign investment. You want to say it's domestic, but where are the Americans that can come together and buy land in $30 million plus increments? Do they even know that if you have 30, you don't even need to be using it? If you can come together with 30 million in a bank account, of course you can get the bank to give you anything. The bank's going to give you cash. They're gonna help you out. It's not like a guarantee, but it's you're pretty confident that what do you need? You supposedly you have this liquid cash, you saved it up. Even if they look at your businesses, so many people be surprised if you got the bank to look at your business and revenue and see, are you a $30 million revenue business? And literally now you can go talk about funding. We're talking about exponential levels, not lower than 30. And it's because there's thresholds, there's investment grades. So we're talking about people that say, "Oh, I want to do the sovereign wealth fund with my community." The investments open up at that point, and they're gonna continue to open up all throughout the process. But how are you gonna do it if you don't partner with other people? How are you gonna do it? You think you're gonna get to $100 million doing it by yourself? Ladies and gentlemen, we've seen it from the gents. It's challenging because there's so much in between that gap from 25 million to $100 million. There's a gap. It's a gap. We could put you on with trading partners. They'll tell you this is what it is. Remember, when you can hold a certain number of assets in your hand with your dollar bills, there's badges that come with this. And for that reason, we're in a class where people are willing to give you money because you can manage certain amounts. It's assets under management. Whether you guys want to know it or not, we had 3 people tap out this past week that they can't trade. They don't want to trade. They don't want to trade. Think about it. The number one paying profession in the world. This is how much they mock a trader. They say, I'm gonna take a break on learning how to cut hair and make $25 or $30 a haircut for the rest of my life. Okay, well, what do you get in trading? You could pretty much make whatever you want. So let's just go with what do you want to make? Base salary American? Do you want to make 6 figures? Do you want to make 7 figures? Okay, because really it doesn't come down to more work. It comes down to what? Learning how to do things better with what you're already doing. Putting more money on it. Risk management. That's what we're talking about. But then we go over to, even if you're cutting hair, you still got a skill. If you're doing other things, it's still a skill. How many people are going to be assets to their communities because they can trade and be a manager of assets? It's not for everybody. Let it be told. The stories ran up this week. You know, what are they going to say? You quit on your dreams. You thought you had it. It was in your clutches and you let it go. You got to stay on it. You got to listen to the mentors. It's one of those things that you just really think about how people think. But the mentors, they share the wisdom. They share the wisdom, and you just have to dig deep and you have to emulate the mentors because that's how you get success. That's how you get success. You emulate the mentors. But so many people, they think they're going to wing it. And that's because they don't come from a mentoring environment. They don't come from that. And when you don't come from the mentorship, it's challenging to get that mentorship. Because the mentorship comes with reproach. It comes with don't turn your hand that way when you're cutting the hair. It's going to come with you messing up a couple people's head before you get it perfectly. The mentor is going to share with you how to get it right. Well, the mentors are ever essential. And it's one of those aces in the hole. It's one of those, it's a sixth sense, but it got more than a six. Now you got seven. You got the mentor. You got seven senses. One of the mentors used to say, how do you go through a minefield? He'd be like, after somebody else that's made it through. You're not supposed to go through the minefield by yourself. So when you talk about partnering with a sovereign wealth fund as a LP or as GP, depending on how you moving, as an LP or a GP, and maybe you can get in as a JV. Maybe it's a JV. Maybe it's a joint venture. But how many people are thinking outside of the box saying, I got to be a part of something else great. I got to be a part of something that's bigger than me already. You can't be the biggest bank now. You got to go up under a couple of other billionaires. Interesting to say the least. For sure. Interesting to say the least. To see how many people don't sell out. We've seen some people sell out this year and they sold out. When you talk about blood, sweat, and tears, everything that they're going to get for a great reason. Through all the year, what most people just lost in, we know trustees that have just leveled up, that have went to a level. And then the door cranked open. It cranked open. It was like, whoo. You know, when you open up the vault and all the money that's on the other side is piled up in there and it falls out? That's what happened. That's what happened with the trustees this year. They got to really experience the money falling out the vault. The money. Because everybody always wants you to speak about the money. Talk about the money. Speak about the money. Sovereign wealth funds, we're talking about it. But how do you do it? You do it in the right position with the right people. We know that funds are built with other families, with other businesses, institutions. Trust Christian and Vault don't really know the game like that. You know, I come from a background, we don't really know the banking, the finance. You known it longer, you read it longer, all of these different things. And so my background is transitioning from something other than finance and trusteeship. Okay. It's a new skill you get ready to learn. That's why it's called trustee training. Then people think they're going to get in business for themselves, but they think they're going to be in business by themselves. That's the first mistake of the first 5-year mistake. You don't have mentorship. So you're not going to be in the first 5 years in business for yourself without others. The vault provides that support system. The support system with the senior mentors. Truly talking about each element of family trusteeship. Family stewardship. How are we talking about that? Talking about doing it through the private family banking system, which we talked about on the previous episode, on episode 338. That's what's going on right now. Its funds can come together and do subdivisions. You can do communities. Whether you know it or not, 30 million is a great threshold. That's just the bottom line. 30 million in any local community or anywhere locale in the states, you have some leverage. You definitely have a decent amount of leverage in the market. Definitely have some leverage in the market, ladies and gentlemen. And the leverage will be in people's hands that have the capital. People say, oh, where am I going to save this money right now? It is so interesting. Sovereign wealth funds come from what they call, let's go back, a surplus of government funds. Trade surpluses, bank revenues that accumulate from budgeting excesses, foreign currency operations, private from money from privatizations, government transfer payments. Really? What is a government transfer payment? Doesn't it make you look into these things when you say, "Oh, I want to build a family or a community wealth building empire"? This is what we talk about with trustees in the private. It's what we're talking about with the mentors, the sovereign wealth funds. It's always been that. Day one, $1 billion sovereign wealth fund is easy nowadays. If you got a halfway decent idea out here, you can put together a good easy $1 billion idea out here nowadays. A lot of people, not to say they're doing it through apps, but $1 billion ideas are going to be they're going to be continue to be more and more walking downhill, if you know what you're doing right now, and that's just the bottom line. So many people are concerned about the outside things, the ooh la la, and in turn, we're seeing that there's so many people that are catching drift of whether it's a sovereign wealth fund, which we call a VC, or we're looking at angels, or we're looking at high net worth investors, or we're looking at foundations that are investing. When we see it from many different angles, sovereign wealth funds are just another angle to invest in what they call the small guy, the little guy, or even countries or bigger institutions. That's where we are. So when we talk about these entities, if somebody says, "Oh, I don't know where to get the money," you heard the name of the entity. You have to Google the names of these entities that are going by the SWF, and once you see what they are, you can clearly see how they're investing, how they're allowing people to invest, what they're looking for with from their investors, things of that nature. I mean, it's a really interesting time to see these things pop up out of nowhere, and you're going to continue to see these type of entities pop up. But these things are kind of like old timey. They still have some good time in the game, at least 5 to 10 years plus. But they're still going to continue to dominate the marketplace. You're going to hear about these things. You're going to hear about these things because they. It's not to say that they're going to buy a country, but these entities are countries once again buying things, and as well families that are buying things in sovereign wealth funds. So when we talk about investment, there is limited investment as well in many different places because of allegiance and the way these sovereign wealth funds are set up. They're not going to allow you to just come in their territory and start buying property because you have a sovereign wealth fund. It doesn't work that way. So there is a jurisdiction in a territory that we've seen with this, which is quite interesting. It's still very territorial, but you're still seeing so many different families look out and invest abroad for sure. So appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. Want to do this episode for sure for the trustees to talk about the importance of when you guys talk about coming together. You obviously see the funds and things that that you're gonna have to play with, and the thought process that you're gonna have walking into these situations. It's gonna be sovereign wealth fund thought process. You're gonna be thinking about private families moving with $100 million each. So you have $100 million a day easily. You got 10 families that have $1 billion. You have 20 families that can get you to 2 billion. I mean, these are good moves right now for the marketplace because you know 20 families. You can see those in sovereign wealth funds, but let's just say you can see sometimes 2 or 3 or 5 families, maybe less than 10 families still in the sovereign wealth fund, and they'll have over $30 billion. So appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate you all. Feel free to reach out, get over to the workshop, Christian@trustchristian.com. Once again, Christian@trustchristian.com. The workshop's going to be in Orlando. Feel free to reach out. You can get over to the workshop. It's going to be in Orlando. It's Christian@trustchristian.com to get over here and get to it. So we look forward to it. We're going to have definitely in the building. We're going to have a financial advisor for sure, licensed 30 years international trustee experience. We're going to have public side funding in the building. We'll definitely do our best to bring these individuals on the line for the episodes coming up, so you guys can get a feel for them and who's going to be there. But a lot of times you really guys are going to get a feel for really just what's private. Ultimately, when you come to the workshops, we had a great workshop earlier this year in May, and we're going to do the same thing here with the trustees here in on September 25th here in Orlando. So just feel free to reach out. We'll get over the details we need to get to you. Just feel free to reach out, Christian@trustchristian.com. We're gonna have Cornell the Trader there. Everybody loves Cornell the Trader. He's always been, where everybody always wants people to talk about. They always want to talk about the money. Then when they get over there with him, they're not talking about the money because he doesn't talk about the money. Even though, when it comes to trading, we could be talking about money. It's more about your mindset, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about, really the intangibles. That's why we call it trustee training. It's more about the mindset for the trading of the mindset than it is just about, oh, come over here and make hundreds of thousands of dollars and all this good stuff. Like, sure, everybody wants to hear those rah rah stories, but at the end of the day, it's really about working with families, impacting families, and that's what we've always made it a point to do. We appreciate all the trustees for listening live. To listen to the replay, feel free to type in the chat where you're listening from. We always appreciate that, and that's the way we appreciate. So we look forward to the trustees coming to the workshop because it's always for the trustees. Trustees get to put names to voices, or faces to voices, and names and things like that, and it really facilitates that private environment. That's the most important part. Is when you're talking about privacy and somebody talks about that. It's like people in trust deal with people in trust, ladies and gentlemen. We can't overemphasize this. But everybody says, oh, I want to do that thing. How do you want to do that and you're not mingling with those people? At least we talk about doing workshops at least 4 times a year. So appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Feel free to reach out, Christian@trustchristian.com. Once again, that's Christian@trustchristian.com.